Over the past 5 episodes, we have mapped the architecture of fiscal sovereignty with surgical precision. We began with a single, uncomfortable truth. The transparency trap is not a theory. It is the operational reality of every high net worth individual who remains anchored to a single, high-tax jurisdiction in the era of the Common Reporting Standard. CRS has dissolved the last illusions of financial privacy within legacy frameworks. Every account balance, every dividend, every unrealized capital gains position you hold is now visible automatically, bilaterally, and permanently to your home tax authority. The old model of quiet offshore accumulation is structurally dead. The old model of jurisdictional opacity, of relying on distance and delay as a substitute for genuine architecture, has been replaced by something fundamentally different. What replaced it is not evasion. It is architecture. Legitimate, compliance defensible, treaty-supported architecture that positions your wealth inside frameworks you have chosen rather than systems you have inherited by default. And over this series, we have built that architecture layer by layer, jurisdiction by jurisdiction, case study by case study, until it functions not as a workaround, but as a sovereign system in the fullest sense of that phrase. Today, in this final episode, we synthesize everything. We revisit the mechanics, the safeguards, and the implementation logic. We close the loop on the European and Middle Eastern nodes, and we reveal definitively where your southern anchor fits inside the completed integrated global model. The mechanics we covered in this series were never abstract. They were executable, designed not to inform you in a general sense, but to equip you with the precise strategic logic required to move from passive awareness to active implementation. We walked through the sequencing of fiscal residency transitions, why the order of establishing new ties matters as much as the ties themselves, and why triggering a departure event before a receiving jurisdiction is fully constituted is the single most common and costly mistake in cross-border structuring. We examined how European structures create legitimate tax advantage environments without triggering anti-avoidance provisions, and how the Enzian framework specifically navigates the substance and management and control requirements that determine whether a structure is respected or challenged by taxing authorities. We addressed the safeguards in detail, economic substance requirements, the arm's length principle for intercompany arrangements, the distinction between tax residency and tax domicile that most generalist advisors conflate at significant cost to their clients. We covered the Middle Eastern node, its zero-rate environment, its treaty network, its positioning as the optimal holding and distribution hub for passive income and unrealized capital gains accumulated across the model. And we confronted the implementation reality with honesty, that a sovereign wealth architecture is not assembled in a weekend. It is not a product you purchase. It is a system you build through sequenced legal steps, coordinated professional teams across multiple jurisdictions, and a timeline measured in quarters rather than days. If you have watched every episode of this series, you now hold the strategic framework. What you need is the final node, the anchor that grounds the entire architecture. That anchor is the Cape. And before you categorize this as lifestyle commentary rather than structural strategy, consider what Cape Town actually represents within a rigorously designed multi-jurisdictional model, South Africa's tax framework, for all the complexity that surrounds it in popular narrative, contains meaningful structural advantages for the globally mobile individual who approaches it with precision. The financial immigration mechanism, the formal reclassification from tax resident to non-resident through the South African Revenue Service, creates a clean ring fence between offshore income accumulated in foreign structures and any residual South African tax exposure, when correctly executed in the correct sequence relative to your other jurisdictional moves. This mechanism allows you to maintain genuine, substantive connection to South Africa without that connection creating an unlimited liability on your global income. This is not a loophole. It is the framework operating as designed for individuals who have done the structural work. But the Cape's value inside your integrated global model extends substantially beyond the tax code. It is one of the very few cities on Earth where you can simultaneously access first world professional infrastructure, a deep and sophisticated English-speaking talent pool across legal, financial, and technology disciplines, a currency differential that makes operational cost a fraction of European equivalents, and a time zone that places you in genuine working overlap with both London and the Gulf in the same business day. The Southern Anchor is where your family lives at exceptional quality. It is where your operational capacity is maintained at sustained competitive advantage. It is the foundation, not the periphery of your model. The Southern Anchor is not where you hide, it is where you build. Every other jurisdiction in your architecture generates returns. Cape Town is where those returns compound into legacy. Now let us be precise about how the Southern Anchor interacts with your European and Middle Eastern structures in practice, because this is the integration question. And it is where most multi-jurisdictional strategies either perform or collapse. The failure mode is treating each jurisdiction as a separate, isolated position without a coherent operational logic connecting them. You have a holding company in one jurisdiction, a trading entity in another, a residency certificate in a third, and no genuine thread of management, substance, or economic activity connecting them into a defensible whole. Taxing authorities and the OECD frameworks that guide them are increasingly sophisticated in identifying this pattern. They look for economic substance. They look for genuine management and control located where you claim it is located. They look for fiscal residency that corresponds to actual documentable physical presence. The solution is not to fabricate connections after the fact. It is to architect genuine ones from the outset. Your European structure functions as your institutional facing entity. It holds relationships with European counterparties, manages regulated investment activity, and sits within a treaty network that legitimizes cross-border income flows at reduced withholding rates. Your Middle Eastern node accumulates and distributes. It holds passive income streams and unrealized capital gains positions inside a zero-rate environment, deploying capital back into the architecture on your terms and timeline. Your Southern Anchor provides the human capital infrastructure that makes both nodes function, the professional team, the family office operations, the compliance and administration disciplines, at a cost base that European and Gulf nodes cannot match. Global connectivity is not a tagline inside this model. It is the structural logic that makes each individual node more valuable than it could ever be in isolation. We must address the elephant in the room, the popular narrative surrounding South Africa. For the retail investor, the headlines are a deterrent, but for the institutional architect, they are the very reason the Cape Atlantic seaboard, specifically hubs like Sea Point, Bantry Bay, and Clifton, represents the most aggressively mispriced sovereign asset in the global market. Asset pricing, whether in real estate or jurisdictional positioning, is a function of perceived risk versus actual utility. The market has priced the Cape as if it were a high-risk emerging market, yet the Atlantic seaboard operates with the structural, cultural, and professional infrastructure of a premium European capital. You have first-world legal, financial, and technological systems, an English-speaking talent pool that is world-class, and a property market in the most desirable postcodes that is currently valued at a fraction of London, Monaco, or Singapore equivalents. When you strip away the headline volatility and focus on the structural utility, the integrated global model we discussed, you find an anomaly. You are acquiring institutional-grade infrastructure and a high-alpha lifestyle anchor at a discounted entry point that simply does not exist elsewhere in the developed world. In any other market, an asset with this combination of professional depth, operational utility, and prime geographic positioning would carry a massive stability premium. In the Cape, that premium has been eroded by sentiment, not by structural failure. This is not merely a place to live. It is a tactical acquisition of a high utility node at a time when the rest of the world's prime markets are trading at record, often irrational, premiums. The question we receive most frequently at this stage of the conversation is a practical one. How do I know which version of the integrated global model applies to my specific situation? The honest answer is that sovereign architecture is a framework, not a template. The precise configuration of your model is determined by a specific set of variables unique to your profile, your citizenship configuration, and what treaty access it provides, your existing asset base, and where it is currently domiciled, your income composition, whether it is salary, dividends, carried interest, royalties, or unrealized capital gains, because each income type is treated differently across jurisdictions and structures, your family configuration and the residency requirements of each family member, and your 5-year liquidity horizon. What the Common Reporting Standard has made unambiguous is that the cost of remaining in an unstructured position compounds faster than the cost of implementation. Every year inside an unstructured single jurisdiction position is a year of funding a tax authority that does not share your objectives at a rate you did not design on a schedule you did not choose. Every year of deferred fiscal residency transition is a year your implementation options narrow because regulatory environments tighten over time, treaty access conditions are renegotiated, and anti-avoidance provisions expand. The window is open. It will not remain open indefinitely. This series was built for a specific audience, and we want to be precise about who that is. Not individuals who are still evaluating whether global structuring is relevant to their situation. For most high net worth individuals operating in Common Reporting Standard signatory states, that question was answered definitively in 2017. This series was built for individuals who already know that structured architecture is the correct response to their fiscal environment, and who need the institutional grade framework, the precise sequencing logic, and the professional network to execute it with confidence in compliance integrity. The Global Wealth Migration Platform is, by design, a professional community rather than a general education service. The 5 episodes that preceded this one are the framework. The private advisory track is where implementation begins. Within that track, your situation is assessed across 4 dimensions. Jurisdictional eligibility based on your citizenship and residency history. Asset and income structuring based on the composition of your current wealth. Timeline sequencing based on your personal and professional obligations over the next 12 to 24 months. And professional coordination across the legal, tax, banking, and compliance specialists required to build and maintain a functioning sovereign wealth architecture in your specific configuration. The advisors within our network are not generalists who have added an international department. They are specialists in cross-border tax law, international fiduciary structures, and the precise compliance architecture of the Common Reporting Standard framework. They have built these structures, they have maintained them through regulatory changes. They understand the difference between a structure that performs on paper and one that performs under scrutiny, and they build only the latter. This is where the series ends and where your architecture begins. The transparency trap is real and permanent. The Southern Anchor is strategic and executable. The integrated global model is the standard for internationally mobile, high net worth individuals who intend to protect and compound their wealth across generational timelines. You have the framework. The next move is yours. Visit the link in the description to request your private advisory consultation. Bring your questions, your complexity, and your timeline. We will bring the structure. Sovereign wealth architecture is not the future. It is the present standard. Build accordingly. Join our community of informed investors to stay ahead. This data is for education and is not financial advice. Always consult a professional before investing. To speak with one of our specialists, click the link in the description. I'll see you in the next report.